All right. Good afternoon, producer Susan. Are you all ready for the eclipse next Monday?
I am. How
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I got my welding mask, which is going to be my eclipse viewer. So you know anybody with a welding mask?
I don't.
Well, anyway, anybody out there has a welding mask, they make great viewing, very comfortable, better than those little pair of glasses.
So what
Anyway,
you're going to be in what about like 80% totality?
85, I thought,
Okay,
85%.
I'm going to be in 96%.
90, well, yes, well, so you're gonna be in great shape. And if you can get your hands on a welding mask, by all means do it.
Yep.
Anyway, you want to hear what we're going to try to talk about today, but won't get through.
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
All right. Well, first of all, it's the Jersey situation with Jersey Joe. It's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. And today's April 2nd, and we're 6 days away from the solar eclipse. Our quote of the week is from Mark Twain on the futility of arguing with stupid people. In our Stupidest Thing I've Heard All Week segment, we'll play a clip of a young woman explaining to this man who's interviewing her why she shouldn't even try to make payments on her student loan debt. It's the stupidest rationale I've ever heard in my life. Um, and we'll talk about the national debt, which is $34 trillion. And we're going to ask the question, if I sat you down at a shredder with a stack with 34 trillion and $100 bills, and you could put them in the shredder at 1 per second, how long would it take you to shred a stack of 34 trillion $100 bills? You might know the answer because I might have copied you, but we're going to ask people, the listeners, if they know. And in a related story, we're going to play several clips of President Biden repeatedly telling people how he cut that $34 trillion figure in half when he actually didn't. We'll tell you how remember last fall, the Teamsters were threatening to strike UPS. They had a big battle that they got down to within 48 hours of strike. Remember that?
Yep.
Well, we'll tell you how the Teamsters won that battle and how they've lost the war. We're going to tell you what's happening as a result of that historic wage and benefit settlement they got with UPS. And last week we talked about squatters, right?
Yes, we did.
Well, we're going to play a chip of one of my favorite sheriffs, Polk County, Florida Sheriff Grady Judge, tells Fox News how they handle squatters in Polk County, Florida. Very interesting approach, way different than New York City. Um, and also TB, when you were in school, high school, did they ever do TB tests? I remember getting tested for TB. They'd poke your arm with a little thing, and if you got a rash, you had TB. You ever have a TB test?
I don't think so because TV was not really a thing when I was growing up.
Yeah, it was virtually eradicated by the 1980s. It was virtually eradicated. Well, it's making a comeback, and we're going to tell you where it's making the comeback and why. Also, did you hear about a so-called mass shooting that took place in Indianapolis over the weekend?
I did not.
Well, the national news media is reporting it as a mass shooting, but it really wasn't, and we'll tell you why it wasn't a mass shooting. If we have time, we'll tell you which city has decided to start giving illegal immigrant families free debit cards with a $350 per week spending limit. That sounds like a good idea, right? Oh,
That
you're a
sounds like
legal
a
immigrant?
terrible idea.
Right. And I doubt we're going to get to this, but I've been trying to play the second half of that clip of the teachers explaining what it's like trying to teach unteachable kids and why they believe those kids have become unteachable, but I doubt we'll have time. And our taxpayer relief shot comes to us. I just screwed that location up. It comes to us from uh, Collinsville, Missouri, where a home invader challenges a homeowner to shoot him, and he gets his wish. So kind of stupid. You're breaking into the house. Well, you're going to have to shoot me. Well, if that's the way you want it. All right. So let's get right to it. Now, quote of the week, Mark Twain. You may have heard this, and I unfortunately fall victim to this. And he said, never argue with stupid people because they will drag you down to their level and then beat you up with their vast experience.
Jersey Joe, what am I always telling you? I'm always telling you to stop arguing with people who ate paste as a
Yeah.
child.
I mean, the level of their ignorance is just stunning. The things they believe and the way they can reject verifiable fact. I mean, they cling to these myths and, well, no, you're lying. No, I'm not lying. I'm quoting you IRS data. I'm quoting you US Treasury data. I'm quoting you Congressional Budget Office data. No, you're lying. That's fake news. You got that from Fox. No, I didn't get any of it. I don't watch Fox News. But yeah, that's Mark Twain. Never argue with stupid people because they will drag you down to their level and then beat you with their vast experience and stupidity. So anyway, So you want to hear the stupidest thing I've heard all week?
Yeah, what's the stupidest thing you heard this week?
Well, this is a young woman being interviewed by this guy, and he's asking her about repaying her student loan debt. And let me turn this up. And it's only a minute clip, and she's explaining to this guy why she doesn't think it's smart to start making payments on her student loans.
Loans. Are you paying minimum monthly payments on these?
I
What's
have
happening?
never made a payment.
Are payments required currently?
I think they are. They started, I believe, last year. You see, I graduated in 2019. COVID happened right afterwards. So we didn't have to pay for 2 years. I was in deep.
You let them know you're in deep. You ask for deferral or you ask to be put on an income-based repayment. We don't just not pay them. They will garnish your wages. They will fuck you.
I was waiting for Biden to forgive them.
Yeah, how'd that go?
He's gonna get it.
No, he's not. The Supreme Court said no.
He's gonna try again.
The Supreme Court said no. It doesn't matter.
I have hope.
Like, hope doesn't really pay off debt.
I have hope. Our next president will help.
The next president is either Biden or Trump.
I know.
they're-
Maybe Trump will find it in his heart to forgive us.
No, he doesn't want to.
Will
He's not
happen.
for that.
Something will happen.
How are you just saying that? What do you mean? Is this how you live your life?
Yes, I'm very optimistic. Something will
Yeah,
happen.
but that's stupid. You gotta live in the real world.
Sometimes you have to take a risk.
That's not taking a risk. That's being a dumb.
So how stupid is that young woman? And do you
Yeah.
do you know any people like that?
Unfortunately, I do.
And the guy's trying to tell her, and they had to bleep out, a lot of the curse words in there. But hope is not a strategy. And this girl, well, no, the next president and the Supreme Court only tell Biden he can't do it, and Trump doesn't want to do it. So I don't know what she's hoping for. And he's
Yeah.
right. Sooner or later, they're going to start garnishing your wages. They're going to come after you. So that's the stupidest thing I've heard all week. I think that's the clear hands down winner.
And I believe, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that during the pandemic, when people didn't have to pay back some of their loans, that didn't stop interest from
No,
accruing.
interest accrued.
Yeah, so they're just making matters worse, quite frankly.
Right. Yeah, they had the option of continuing payments, or they had an interest of deferring the payments, but interest was still accruing. And
Yeah,
and if you could have paid and didn't, you were stupid. Anyway,
yeah,
so remember at the beginning, I asked you, we talked about the national debt being 34 trillion. So here's a question for the listeners. If I put you in a room with 34 trillion in $100 bills and I set you up in front of a paper shredder, and maybe it's two, one on your left, one on your right, and you could start feeding $100 bills into those shredders, one every second, how many years would it take you to shred 34 trillion? And here's a hint. 1 trillion is 31,710 years.
yeah. I was gonna say it would be several thousand years.
Right. And without interest, it's 1,078 years, but
Mhm.
that's without interest. Now, but if you include interest, which is accruing at the rate of about 800 billion per year, the answer is infinity, because at one $100 bill per second, you can only shred $3.1 billion per year. Well, if you're only shredding 3.1 billion and the interest is accruing at 800 billion, what's 800 billion minus 3?
797
97 billion. So you're falling 700 since you can only shred 3 billion per year and the interest is adding 800 billion per year, even at one $100 bill per second, you would be falling behind 797 billion per year. The interest would be growing 30 times faster than you could shred it. So that's just a kind of a visual on how big 34 trillion. And again, 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years. That's how big a trillion is, just to put that in perspective. Anyway, so let me ask you a question. You've heard the term budget deficit and you've heard the term national debt. Do you know the difference?
Yes, I do.
What's the difference? What's the budget deficit?
It's very large, not quite as large as what we owe.
Right, but is it the same as a national debt?
No, they're separate. So the deficit is what's coming in versus what's going out would be
in
the
one
deficit.
in 1 year.
Yes.
And this year it's around maybe just under 2 trillion. So it's an
Okay.
annual number.
Yeah.
And the national debt is the sum of all prior deficits. So if you add all the prior deficits together, you get the national debt.
Mhm.
But so the budget deficit, which Most people with a college degree, even some with a high school, know the difference between the budget deficit, which is a one-year number, and the national debt, which is a historic cumulative sum. So, and you would think that of all the people who would know the difference, that the President of the United States would know the difference, right?
You would think, you would hope.
Right. Now, and you can give a guy a pass, if he mistakenly refers to the national debt when he meant to say the deficit. Fine, okay, well, that's a one-time, what do you call it? A one-time hiccup. But if
Mhm.
once you say it the first time and you've got a staff, don't you think they take your side and say, Mr. President,
Yeah.
you made a mistake, that real. But so here's how many times Biden keeps repeating the lie that he has cut not the deficit, but the national debt in half. Here we go. And this is all in 1 minute. And these are different speaking engagements.
The national debt by $1,700,000,000,000. We literally cut the federal debt in half by.
By the way, let me go back. He said we cut the national debt by 1.7 trillion. No, you reduced the deficit by 1.7, but since the deficit was still had 1.5, the national debt wasn't reduced. The national debt grew because you didn't reduce the budget
Yep.
deficit by more than 100%. You only cut it in half, which means the other half increased the national debt, did not decrease the national debt. So I'm going to start that over because listen to him confuse the two right from the get-go.
I cut the national debt by $1,700,000,000,000. We literally cut the federal debt in half by $1.4 trillion. $1,700,000,000,000. $1,700,000,000,000 cut. We cut the debt by 1.7 billion in the last 2 years. Let me say that again. $1.7 trillion. Reduced the budget by 1.7 billion. Okay, reduce the debt. We cut the federal debt in half. Fact. In the first 2 years of my administration, I cut the debt by $1.7 trillion. $1.7 billion. 1.7 trillion.
By the way, I'm going to back that up. He then said 1.7 billion, which is 1,000 times less than 1.7 trillion. So listen to him confuse billions and trillions here.
$1.7 billion. 1.7 trillion. $1.7 trillion. $1.7 trillion. $7 billion.
There he goes with billion again.
$1.7 trillion. $1.7 billion.
Billions again.
Trillion. Not billion, $1 trillion. $1.7 trillion. Hear me? No one's ever reduced the debt that much. I cut.
And he has not, the national debt has not been reduced by 1 penny since he took office, not 1 penny ever. It has
Mhm.
grown every single year because he's never gotten down to a zero budget deficit. So no, Joe, you haven't cut the national debt by even 1 penny in 3.5 years. So I don't know, how sad is that, producer
I
Susan?
think it should be every president's goal to have a $0 deficit. And with all the unnecessary spending we have in government, I really don't understand why this is such a challenge with all this stuff that we're needlessly spending money on. But even if you have a $0 deficit, you're not putting a dent in the national debt.
Right, it doesn't, you're right. Getting to a zero annual deficit it doesn't shrink the national debt by a penny. You have
So
to
at minimum, every president should have a $0 deficit.
right. So at least the national debt stops growing. That'd be huge if we get to a zero budget deficit, and a budget surplus would be even better. But doesn't this guy have a staff? How many times did he repeat? And those were all different occasions. You could see different clothes. He was in, he's in different suits. He was in an open neck shirt. He was in a golf shirt. This was speech after speech after speech where he
Mhm.
made the same bogus claim. Oh, and I just think it's embarrassing that a guy is supposed to know either. No, let me ask you a question. Did he know he was lying, or did he not know that what he was saying was not the truth? Which do you think it was?
I don't know. I feel like maybe it's a little bit of both. Is he hoping that the American people are that stupid that the American people don't know the difference when this is like high school economics.
Yeah, I'm just shaking my head. Either way, the answer, well, let me rephrase the question. Was he knowingly lying, or is he that stupid that he doesn't know the difference? And if you're the
I mean, either
president,
answer is
no,
bad.
I didn't finish my question. Let me finish the whole question. Was he knowingly lying, or is he that stupid that he doesn't know the difference? And if you are the president of the United States, which answer to that question is worse?
Yeah, they're both horrible. They're
Right.
both horrible answers, regardless.
Right. So to me, it's which answer is worse, Joe? Are you knowingly lying to us, or are you that stupid? And whichever answer you say, it's still a horrible, it's still,
Yeah.
you have to shake your head. So that's just, it just blows me away that he keeps repeating it, and that now I don't know if his staff has tried to correct him or not. You would hope that they would pull him aside and,
But in
and
most cases, he's reading from a
a
teleprompter.
teleprompter. Yeah.
So like, who wrote the teleprompter?
I don't know, but my God, you're the president of the States. You don't know the difference between the budget deficit and the national debt. I'm just shaking my head at what goes on.
Do you remember back, a movie named Dave?
Yep, when
where
the real president was
Yeah,
in
like-
coma. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can stand up and read a teleprompter.
Yeah, you can fake it. Yeah, absolutely. All right. We got so much. I'm gonna move right on. So last week we talked about squatters and the woman in New York City who got arrested
yeah.
for changing the locks on her own home. And that was New York City, right?
Yes.
And we've had other instances where people have been arrested. They can't get this. Remember, there's a case in California where a woman had been living in the guest house for 2 years. She rented it on an Airbnb, and then she claimed she had a lease, and she was there for 2 years and wouldn't leave. And the state of California. Anyway, here's our favorite sheriff from Polk County, Florida, Grady Judge, telling Fox News how they treat squatters in Florida, in Polk County anyway. Here we go.
Enough, promising to give the freeloaders a new place in the county jail if they continue trespassing in his jurisdiction. Join us now, Polk County, Florida Sheriff Grady Judge. Sheriff, you're known for being a law and order guy. You don't take any nonsense. Tell me about the difficult job that your cops have. They go to a scene, someone's squatting, they have this fake contract, and they got to decide if it's real or fake.
Good morning, Lawrence. Yes, that's true. We have people that want to move into vacant houses. Sometimes they try to do that with a dummied up contract. And what they're doing is trespassing. They've broken into somebody's house. Well, there's many jurisdictions across the state and across the nation that says, oh, it's civil. So now all of a sudden, these freeloaders are in your house for months while it works its way through the civil process. Well, the state of Florida made that abundantly clear through.
And by the way, while he's talking, they're showing videotape of these homes that have been destroyed, holes in the walls, holes in the ceiling, copper pipes ripped out. So all this is being played in the background. So let me continue with the sheriff here. Let me back it up just a little bit.
Months while it works its way through the civil process. Well, the state of Florida made that abundantly clear through our Governor DeSantis, which we think is the greatest guy ever. And our legislature, they said, no, we're going to make that a criminal event. Well, in Polk County, it was already a criminal event. We never had that problem because we go to the house, we determine, well, the real owner doesn't know who these people are, entered into no contract. We load them up, give them a one-way ride to the county jail. It's just that simple. You don't have to bog it down in court. Just do what's right.
So, Sheriff, what's been the difference ever since you've been locking them up? I'm sure they're leaving your county and probably leaving the state now and going to other states because now you're giving the discretion to your cops. Is that right?
That's right. It's always been that way in this county. They pop smoke on us and leave whenever they.
Did you catch that reference? Pop smoke, meaning burn rubber.
Yeah.
Love that.
Get out of jail and they're gone. I mean, they're gone fast because we don't put up with it. And that's the bottom line, Lawrence. Across this nation, if you get tired of it, do something about it. We do that every day. And that's why our crime rate is at like 50-year lows here in Polk County, Florida.
Imagine that when you lock people up, the repeat offenders, they can't do the crime anymore. So, Sheriff, I guess I would ask you, because there's a lot of states, a lot of counties that have said this is very complicated. What is your advice to them to end this crisis that's happening all across the country?
Lawrence, you're right. You don't have to make it a civil deal. When somebody breaks into your home, whether you're in it at the time, it may be up for sale. You may have gone on a cruise around the world. For whatever reason, your property's empty. People don't have the right to move in, turn the electricity on, change the locks, and claim it as theirs. It's not difficult. It's burglary. It's theft of your property. It's trespassing. Just use your current laws and go arrest them and lock them up. They'll be more than happy not to come back whenever they find all their stuff stacked outside after you have appropriately taken them away and the homeowner gets their home back and throws their junk out.
Real quickly, Sheriff, because I've gone to a lot of these.
All right, I'm going to cut it off there. So what do you think of
Yeah,
Sheriff?
you know, the world needs more sheriffs like Grady Judd.
Yeah.
The reporter said that this is complicated. There is nothing complicated about this. This is clear and simple. This is not civil. This is criminal, trespass, criminal. Yeah, this is all criminal. This is not civil at all. And it is clear and simple. It is not complicated.
Right. And we'll put that link up. Producer Susan will put that link up
Yep.
on the website if you want to copy it. That'll be on the JerzeeJoe.com website. All right. So at the beginning, at the intro, we talked about TB infections which were almost eradicated in this country back in the 80s, right? Well,
Yeah.
CDC came out with a report last week that said reported tuberculosis cases have hit a 10-year high last year at almost 10,000, up 16% from the previous year. Now, I can't for the life of me figure out what might have contributed to that dramatic increase, which, by the way, was most pronounced in border states like California and Texas. But here's a clue. If you dig deeper into the CDC data tables like I did, you will find this sentence. In 2023, among the 9,573 TB cases in person, and by the way, these are only the ones that are diagnosed, for whom birth origin was known, out of 9,573 where they knew their place of birth, 7,259 or 76% occurred among, wait for it, non-US born persons. So is that a clue where the tuberculosis is coming
and
from?
I'm going to take a guess that the other 24% of the people who are infected are probably can be traced to where they acquired it.
Yes.
Or were
Now,
infected.
but let me tell you even the bigger impact, which nobody's talked about. Do you want to know how that is impacting our food chain and how catastrophic it could be to our food chain?
Yeah, how?
Do you know that TB can be passed from humans to animals?
Yes.
Well, in Texas, and by the way, many illegal immigrants, either because they can get a work permit or they have a forged green card or they're working on a table, a lot of illegal immigrants find work working on farms and ranches. Well, just in Texas, in two separate cases, more than 23,000 head of cattle had to be slaughtered after they were found to be infected with, wait for it, a human strain of TB that experts say originated outside the United States. One state. So this is just, so in how many, because now you got, they're working on dairy farms up in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and the government is giving them work permits. And, illegal aliens, even with a work permit, it is not unusual for them to be working as farmhands. You know that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and of course, by the way, if you immigrate to the United States on a visa, you know one of the things they have to have in order to before you'll be admitted with your visa?
Clean bill of health.
You have to have a health certificate from a doctor taken in the previous 10 days. When you're taking in 250,000 people a week across our southern border, and they say they're processing them does not include a health inspection other than for obvious, are you dehydrated or you have any bleeding wounds? It's simply, we're going to take your picture and fingerprint you and give you a notice to appear. That's processing. There's no in-depth health inspection. So, and again, that 9,053 is only the reported cases. I'm willing to bet that the actual number of cases, because a lot of people have TB and don't know it.
Mhm.
I'm willing to bet that the actual number of cases is many, many times that 9,600 figure. So,
You know, a lot of these immigrants that are coming across the border, they, you know, it's very similar to a bad cold, cough, sneeze.
yep,
They think they just have a bad cold and they're afraid to go to the doctor because they're afraid if they go to the doctor, they're going to end up getting deported.
right.
So I agree with you that there's probably thousands of people who don't know that they're infected because they either are not that bad symptomatically or they're afraid to go to the doctor.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. How much time we got left?
Let's see. You only have about 10 minutes left.
All right, so we got to move on here. So you said you didn't hear about it, but the national news over the weekend reported, quote, a mass shooting that took place in Indianapolis over the weekend. Now, you and I have talked about this before, and when most people hear the term mass shooting, I believe that most of them think about a scenario with a lone gunman shooting and killing multiple victims at random in a public place, a shopping center, a school. That's what they think. I mean, that's what you think of, right? When you hear mass shooting.
Yep.
And, and a lot of dead people laying around.
Mhm.
Well, that kind of layman's understanding aligns very, very closely with the official U.S. government definition of a mass shooting, which is, and listen carefully, 4 or more victims killed, not wounded, killed. Number 2, at random. In other words, they weren't targeted. They were just at random by a single shooter, not multiple shooters, in a public place. So again, U.S. government definition, 4 or more victims killed at random by a single shooter in a public place. Now, conversely, if I told you that, hey, Saturday night in Chicago, 2 groups of gangbangers started shooting at each other. When the smoke cleared, 4 of them wound up having to go to the ER getting treated for gunshot wounds. Would you consider that a mass shooting?
No.
Right, because you had multiple shooters, nobody died. The victims weren't random. The victims were known to each other. They were shooting at each other. So nobody died. Wasn't random, multiple shooters instead of a single shooters. So then why is the media using that term to describe an incident that took place outside an Indianapolis shopping mall at, and I pay attention to the time, 11:30 on a Saturday night when 7 teenagers aged 12 to 17 were wounded in an exchange of gunfire between opposing shooters? Why was a 12-year-old out at a mall at 11:30 on a Saturday night?
Yeah. Who are their parents?
Who are their parents, and what are 12 to 17-year-olds, not one, multiple teenagers doing with guns?
Mhm.
And again,
That
so
they obviously did not get legally because a 17 or
You're-
younger can't own a gun legally.
can't purchase or even possess a gun legally. And again, but the media said, oh, it was a mass shooting. No, it wasn't a mass shooting in Indianapolis. All right. By the way, the city that's giving $350 per week, not per month, per week debit cards to illegal immigrant families, New York City. And
How
of
do I
course,
get one of those?
and by the way, you think it's only the New York City pack? No, they're getting federal aid for that. So you're helping to pay for those because it's being the federal government is subsidizing those debit cards.
So they're getting $1,400 a month just for existing.
Well, no, yeah, $1,400 a month just for being there, and that's on top of all the other aid they qualify, by the way. All right.
Yeah. How come I don't get that?
Great question. But I'm going to try to fit in why our taxpayer relief shot. Here's why we call them taxpayer relief. And we already heard from Sheriff Grady Judd. Here's the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, explaining why we call them taxpayer relief shots.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
All right, and he's another Florida sheriff. Anyway, so here's our taxpayer relief shot from Collinsville. Here we go. Yep, Collinsville, Missouri, outside of St. Louis. And here we go. Let me back this up a little bit.
Say a man was shot and killed while trying to break into a Collinsville home Tuesday night. Ms. 11's Kelly Hoskins has more on what we're learning about the investigation and what led to the killing.
We're right outside of the Collinsville Police Department where authorities identified the suspect as 31-year-old Jonathan Gagan of Collinsville. Now, police say that Gagan tried to enter the victim's home, and that's when the homeowner opened fire. One man is dead in what police are calling an attempted home invasion. The tragedy all unfolded Tuesday night around 6 in the 500 block of St. Louis Road in Collinsville. Officers responded to a report of a shooting, and upon arrival, detectives found 31-year-old Jonathan Gagan and one of the residents at the scene, who is also a part-time employee at the Collinsville Police Department. Residents say the news is shocking.
It is a real tragedy for out here. People can't be safe inside their homes, let alone be on the street, going doing about their daily business. It's just a horrible situation.
Investigators say Gagan did not know the homeowners and entered onto the front porch of the home and refused to leave. Officials say the resident feared for his own safety and the safety of his family and went into his home and retrieved his firearm. As the resident remained in his home, police say the homeowner repeatedly told Gagan not to enter the house. We're told that Gagan opened the door and stated that the resident would have to shoot him. In an attempt to protect his family, the homeowner opened fire and struck Gagan in the chest.
Yeah, very scary. Knowing that it's that close to home and you never know what you're gonna walk into when that kind of stuff's happening,
At this time, police are still trying to figure out what led Gagan to that particular home. They say this case will be turned over to the Madison County State's Attorney's Office for review. Reporting in
So prophetic, so the guy, despite the warning, opens the door, steps into the guy's house and says, well, you're going to have to shoot me. Well, be
Well, if
careful.
you insist.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. Anyway, before we sign off, Producer Susan, any comments or anything you want to add to this?
We've talked about this a couple times on some previous shows about some towns outlawing gas-powered lawn equipment and
Lawnmowers,
stuff.
right?
I bought a lawnmower over the weekend. The calendar says April, although it's supposed to snow tomorrow. We're supposed to get snow. But I had researched what I wanted to buy. I went into 2 different big box stores. I won't mention their names. And the salesman says, we don't sell those in the store. You can't buy those in the store. If you want that gas-powered lawnmower, you have to order those online.
Special order. I'll be damned.
I'm just amazed. You can no longer purchase a gas-powered lawnmower in the store. They're pushing all these battery-powered lawnmowers. And now I don't live on an extravagant lot. I live on a normal residential 1/3 of an acre, and it takes me about 2 hours to mow my lawn. I would need like 4 batteries.
Yeah. Well, so did you get your gas powered? Did you get your gas?
I did, although because it's been raining and now it's going to turn to snow. I haven't unboxed it yet, but yeah, I just, it's coming. The guy says, if you want your gas lawnmowers, you better stock up on them now.
Well, good for you. All right. And I'm all set. All right. I know we're running out of time. So let me wrap up here unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, everybody check to see where you are in the line of totality. Next, it's going to be 3:20 on Monday afternoon here.
Yep. 3:45 in New Jersey, by the way. All right.
Yep. And our schools, by the way, all of our schools have early dismissal because that 3:20 is about when schools let out.
Okay.
And I don't want the children looking at the sun when they get off the school bus.
Right.
So all of our schools have either no school or early dismissal on Monday.
All right. All right. Hey, I want to thank all of you who listen to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things that I found of interest and importance. And I hope you found those topics as interesting as I did. Let me turn that off. Anyway, if you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, you can find them on the Jerzee Joe website. Just remember to spell, it's jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee, 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 jerzeejoe.com. If you want to send me an email with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, you can do that by sending me an email to just simply joe@jerzeejoe.com, jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee Joe with a Z and a double E. And with that, I'll sign off unless you've got anything else you want to add. Otherwise, I'll talk to you
Yeah,
next
I'll just
week.
remind everybody, don't look at the sun, or maybe we should institute Darwinism.
All right. All right, Producer Susan, talk to you next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.